Hello and welcome everybody. We are excited to be here talking and meeting with you today. I'm going to give everybody just a couple seconds to get logged in, but then we are going to jump right in because we have a lot to get through today. Some really exciting stuff that I know everybody's going to be interested in. So. There you go, Mac. All right. I think we're good to get started. So today we are here talking about definitely the UK's first urban forest master plan, what we think is probably Europe's first urban forest master plan. And I'm really excited to be moderating today's session with you. My name is Josh Behounek, and I help lead a lot of urban forest master plans here in the States. So this is particularly exciting to be here today. The session is being recorded. So if for any reason you need to leave early or you want to forward it to somebody else or reference back to it, you'll be getting a link to the recording. Today, we are going to be doing some interactive poll questions. We have about 4 of them. And that's a really good way for us to know a little bit more about you and to engage, since this is a one-way information sharing. So if you could please fill those out. If for any reason you're having any technical issues or you want to ask a question, we definitely want questions. Go ahead and type those into the question chat bar, and we will take those. We'll be doing a live Q&A at the end. We do, like I mentioned, we do have quite a bit to get into today. So there is a chance that we could take up the full hour with presentations, and we'll be hanging out for a while afterwards as well to do a live Q&A. But in the event that you need to leave early, we understand that, respect your time. Feel free to go ahead and type your question in, and then we can follow back up with an email response if you have to leave. So maybe one of the things that I always have fun with on these international webinars is if you go ahead and type in where you're calling in from or where you're sitting today. It's always exciting to see those places. All right, so without further ado, I am going to introduce our panelists of speakers. First off, we have Mac, who is going to be talking about what is an urban forest master plan. His real name is Ian McDermott, and he started in the horticulture and arboriculture field in 1976 in the private industry, has worked in several sectors of arboriculture and urban forestry, and a couple years ago he actually retired from a local authority, and now he primarily teaches level 6 arboriculture and spends a lot of time doing volunteer training for different municipalities and delivering Birmingham's Tree People Tree Warden training. And then followed by that, we have Simon Needle, who is with the city of Birmingham, and he is the principal arboriculturist and ecologist for the city council's city design team. He is going to be talking to us about why Birmingham wanted an urban forest master plan. He is working on several current projects within Birmingham, including this urban forest master plan, as well as our future city plan, the City of Nature chapter, and leading the green-blue infrastructure for the city's net zero carbon plan, the Route to Zero. And then following it all up is going to be Kenton Rogers, who is going to get into the meat and potatoes of how an urban forest master plan is done. I think many people on this webinar know that Kenton is a co-founder of Treeconomics, which is a social enterprise based in Exeter Science Park. And their mission is to work with communities, businesses, and research institutions to highlight the value of trees. They've done over 30 projects in the UK and abroad, really bringing iTree from the States into international scene there. So it's been exciting to see that evolution. So with that, we are going to go ahead and turn things over to Mac. We are going to turn our webcams off whenever we're presenting just to save some bandwidth, but we'll bring them back on whenever the presentation is over and we're doing live Q&A. So, all right, Mac, I can see your screen I think you are ready to go. If you want to do a mic test for me.
Yeah, can you hear it? I'm there. It's all good.
You sound great.
Okay, I've just got a couple of messages to click out the way. And this is where everybody understands Josh's beautiful accent and introduction and can't understand mine. But hopefully, if there are any problems, you can put them in the chat, and Nadine or one of the Catherine will deal with them. I promised my co-presenters that I won't trample all over their time slots. So hopefully we can advance this one. Yeah, that's moving on. Just a little picture to introduce you, and we're using this as we're doing a who, what, where, when, how, and why presentation today with the three of us. So I've kind of got the who, which Josh has covered, and I've got the what. And this is the picture that just shows whatever you think, there's always room to plant one more tree. And just a little bit about obviously who we are with this particular plan. So I represent Birmingham tree people, and we're actually the contractor, and along with Kenton and Nature-Based Solutions, we've delivered City Council. And Kenton will be talking about the processes of how he went through, and Simon will be dealing mostly with the policy and how it fits in with the city's aspirations. So I'm just going to try and spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about what Urban Forest Master Plan actually is. I think we got the first poll, have we, Josh? Or is that not happening yet? Oh, here we go.
Yep, here we go. So before we get into it, we want to know if you have a strategic plan in place for your trees. So we'll just leave this poll question open for a couple seconds. All right, looks like everybody's figuring out. I'll be closing the poll here. And 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to share these results. So it looks like Mac, over half definitely don't have one, but wish they did, and or not sure if they have one.
That's excellent. Am I back to my share? Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for that, Josh. I appreciate that. So we do have that audience where they're actually interested in what we've done because they want one themselves. So that's fantastic. So this is the picture on the right, is the splash of our front cover. We've got a 30-year on this one, as you can see, 21 to 51. And on the left-hand side, you've got one of the reasons that we actually developed this master plan, which is because we're a tree city of the world. We're one of the first major cities in the UK to do that. And currently the UK is only biophilic city. And that was one of the drivers for generating a master plan. And this one, we said we've given a 30-year life before we do the actual major review. But we'll talk about the plan reviews on the last slide. So what is a master plan? And I apologize for I've stolen this from somewhere else. The slide you've got in front of you is Birmingham. The pictures we're showing you are actually Birmingham. We do have trees, and we have quite a lot of them. So it is an important thing for us. So it's a future destination that provides the detailed information, certain recommendations and resource limitations or resource availability that will inform the community and its tree managers. And we consider it's the community that we're serving. So this isn't doing something just to put it on the shelf and it'll never be seen again. We're serving the community that live within and visit Birmingham. And the overall goal for our plan is full stocking. I know it's Christmas, and I could probably do quite a few jokes about full stockings, but I'm not going to. No, too late, I've just done them. However, we're going to just describe what full stocking actually means. The overall aim of the plan is to obviously insert as many trees into the geographical areas within Birmingham that we can. In order to do that, there is a formula, and this has been around for a couple of 3 decades, nothing new. That's the magic number. So we have to work out everything on the right-hand side, hopefully you can see my cursor, to calculate the magic number. And the magic number is the numbers of trees we have to plant each year in each geographical area in order to reach a maximum capacity for trees within that area. So R is the number of trees we remove annually as part of the program. V is the vacant tree pits, and that might take any shape: street tree pits, parks, could be any number of vacant pits. G is the goal year. So how many years before we reach full stocking? So if it was 10, you would divide the vacant pits by 10. And then you divide the whole of that side of the equation by the survivability. So your what the survivability rate of your tree planting. And in Birmingham's case, it's about 85–90% in highways. Once you've got that information, which hardly anybody I know has, you can then work out the numbers of trees we have to plant each year. And that's kind of what we're hoping that the master plan will eventually inform us of. My apologies to Josh. This is one of his slides that we've used before. I'm not going to go through the center bit that says tree strategy, because we're just going to talk about the master plan. We don't have time for everything. So fundamentally, the master plan deals with the public and the private trees. 70–80% of Birmingham's urban forest is in private land. If we're going to produce a plan to deal with trees, we cannot ignore 80% of the urban forest. It involves all the stakeholders, not just the officers. We're a third-party charity, a third sector organisation, basically the tree wardens, and we've involved as many people from as many sectors as we can, professionals, volunteers, inside Birmingham and across the region. And we're hopefully having a shared vision. I would never want to work for anybody who has visions, but in this case, I think it's okay. Our framework, and Kenton will talk a little bit more about this, was in fact around about 12 months. And you can compare this with the tree strategy if you want. We have an implementation framework of 30 years, not 20. And the prices here are based on Philip van Wassenaar's paper, which I think will maybe available for a download, but certainly the download from Jim Clark, which is what we based our entire plan on, is available for you, which is this piece on the right-hand side. We have basically taken accepted wisdom from within the urban forest sector and gone, right, we're going to use a model of urban forestry sustainability to create our plan. And they are fundamentally trees and forest community framework and resource management. And then we've got each of these would be one of our KPIs. And those key performance indicators are then given ratings and how we're performing against them. And this is the fundamental difference that we're having, how we are doing as one of the intrinsic parts of the plan. So the adaptive management circle, which you can see on the left. So what do we have? We've taken all the information that we've got currently within the city, and there's a substantial amount, but there are also huge holes which we need to fill over the next few years. Then we have the vision with what do we want. This is a standard adaptive management circle, and that we've taken from our numerous workshops. Where are we going? How do we get there? But we swapped the how are we doing with the how are we getting there. So we went to measure where we are, and then we lay our plans out in subsequent documents. The Urban Forest Master Plan isn't that resource heavy to do, but it's the start of the journey. There's a huge amount of work needs to follow from this document in order to deliver the visions that we've laid out. So it is the starting point. And H1, as I said, is the KPIs. We'll look at those in more detail in a second. So that one there in some of the strategies is dropped out. That's the only thing I would say, that our circle has 4 units to it. It doesn't have to have. Many other authorities in the UK drop the how are you doing out because it's sometimes a very painful metric to measure. We're not doing very well. Now, my apologies for anybody here that may be offended for the next 5 minutes. If you are easily offended, please look away. So this is a Confor slide from a talk we went to ages ago. These are the, thankfully, Confor laid out these targets from different organisations, Friends of the Earth, Royal Society and Royal Academy, and they've all got tree planting targets where they want to reach by 2030. These are just numbers. A plan without a time frame is just a wish list, and we haven't actually put time frames and measured ours. Then you've got those strategies that don't have any measurable outcomes at all. So this is just a coffee table book that costs several thousands of pounds to produce, but has no useful information in it at all. And then we have the ultimate in insanity, where Gloucester County Council produced a headline figure 2 years ago. They're going to plant 35 million trees in 10 years. And somebody pointed out that's 10,000 trees a day, or excess of 10,000 trees a day. And after 2 years, they planted 10,000 trees. So 1/720th of the actual target. It's just numbers, and playing the numbers game. Every time you do it, time and time again, expecting a different outcome is the definition of madness. This is a splash from our own plan. It's available as a download. Each section has a summary chart, and as you can see, most of ours are moderate. We've been quite harsh on our ratings, but we're just going to have a quick look at R3 and R4. So canopy cover assessments, everybody's got one. Environmental justice, no one's got it. So this is a further deep dive into the plan itself. So the canopy cover assessment, you'll notice that we have a low performance rating, and it's given a high priority because of that. The truth of the matter is we have 5 complete canopy assessments. The problem being that we don't know how many are, but what they measured and how they were done, and depending on which one we use, will give us a different reading entirely. So the truth of the matter is it was pretty much useless. So part of our next actions are to develop details on how we measure our canopies. And the other one is environmental justice, what we call tree equity. And we've just, obviously, because this has been given a high priority, we have gone all out for this one as our next step. So we've invested a fair bit in software in order to calculate tree equity for planting. And Simon and we'll talk a lot more about this next. And I think I'm just about to hand over within the time. So just that last slide before I hand it on to Simon. Urban forest report cards don't exist currently in the UK. There's about 3 in the US. And we've got an example here from Abbotsford and one from Washington. So what we're doing now is measuring how we perform on an annual basis with a 5-year major report card based on the outcomes we've laid out in our report. So this is how we measure our progress along the plan. Thank you for your time. Hope it wasn't too garbled and too quick. A lot to get through. I have to stop sharing, don't I? Yeah.
Thanks, Mac. That was great. Yeah, so we're going to transition over to Simon now, who works with the Birmingham City. So Simon, you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, I will apologise to everybody out there. My IT hardware is a little bit slow, so hopefully we'll get through this. It should be loading up the screen shortly. But yeah, that's right, Josh. Thanks. I work for Birmingham City Council. I've been working for the city for 32 years now, but in different roles. But mostly in the green infrastructure environment, so within parks and open spaces.
While that loads up, while that loads up, just so everybody knows, it looks like the handouts are all working now. So if you had trouble before, go ahead and download those. But now we can see you, Simon. Looks great.
Okay. Right, thanks. Yeah, so thanks. So we said we were going to carry on with why an urban forest master, why we wanted an urban forest master plan. So this was if we sort of set a little bit of a context for Birmingham as to what we have within the city. Where I find the delay in my slides a bit frustrating. Yeah, we've been working on our urban forest for quite some time, but without a sort of real overview or plan. So here we go. Hopefully that slide's loaded up there. So yeah, so for Birmingham, Birmingham has within its bounds somewhere over 1 million trees, and that's the data that we've taken from our national tree map produced by Blue Sky. And of these, I mean, that's 250,000 are in private ownership. It's probably more than that. But we have some major landowners such as Calthorpe Estates, Bourneville Village Trust, universities, private householders, and other non-public land within the city. Of the trees under the City Council's management, this includes 137,000+ individually plotted non-highway trees. So those are in schools, parks, cemeteries, and housing areas. And these trees come from a diverse range covering 37 families, 81 genus within those. We've got trees on the highway account for around 75,000 individual trees, so it's a good number, but there's always scope to add some more there. The largest bulk of our trees, though, are within woodlands, covering some 1,398 hectares of land within the city. So we sort of tried to calculate an average density of trees within those. We could do a certain amount from the canopy mapping, but obviously we know there's understory trees. So we've got probably something like 630,000 trees within those woodland areas. There's also, we've got quite a lot of other green infrastructure in the city as well, with quite many miles of canals, rivers and streams as part of that. Now, next slide's going to be loading up shortly. There we go. So coming back to why we wanted an urban forest master plan. So Birmingham's had a bit of a checkered past in relation to trees and their management. We've had a number of major incidents. One in 1999 led to improvements in tree risk management and review and the production of a new tree management policy. That did bring in additional budget and staffing to manage the urban forests. However, there were no or little funds for tree replacement. And over the past 10 or 15 years, the pace of development within Birmingham has increased, and it's still increasing now, with more pressure put on for new transportation projects, especially mode shift as well, looking to bringing new cycleways, bus lanes, those sorts of things, and regeneration of the city centre. And this has placed significant pressures on city centre trees. So, with the limited resource that tree officers had, we did our best to try and make sure that there was consideration of trees, but sometimes, especially our highways colleagues, they didn't see the long-term benefits of trees. And within sort of a planning perspective, it was seen that, well, we can incorporate mitigation planting within these, and that wasn't always successful. So, I mean, Corporation Street is just one such example of where this work had happened for a new transportation project. So the top picture there is showing Corporation Street before the new metro scheme went in, and we can see that we've got a number of London planes up the street there. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the best environment for pedestrians with traffic coming right through the middle, but I think when you compare that with the bottom image, where all the trees have gone, we've now got this barren, bland space with no urban greening at all. So it's not the most hospitable of environments, I have to say. It's certainly not one of my favourite places within the city. So that kind of change that was happening in Birmingham has been picked up by a lot of the local groups. And in 2017, one of our local groups, Birmingham Trees for Life, started a campaign to save a tree that was at threat on Broad Street, which is in the heart of the city centre, from another part of the metro extension plans. Now that's the tree there in the picture, and it was probably the largest tree on the street at the time. So it was of significance for that. Now their campaign was gathered quite a lot of momentum. It gathered support from local councillors, from the community at large, and there was a sort of an investigation as to whether it could be saved. Now the metro, so the tram route went in, but actually didn't need to take the tree out. But at the same time, there was a competition being run, a global competition for a redesign of the square behind, and they were working on the basis that the tree was going. So unfortunately, with the two things in hand, we weren't able to save the tree, but it did lead to a review of the tree policies that was started by that group. They asked for it, called for it, and the leader of the council made the commitment that we would have that review. So during 2017, the two councillors took up that proposal to full council for a review of all the policies and practices relating to trees, and a cross-party working group was set up of officers. They issued a call for evidence from community, from professionals and other stakeholders, and that was presented at a public hearing, so that was broadcast live as well. The report on the findings and a proposal for adoption were presented to full council. There were 12 recommendations in there, one of which was around having a single strategic overview of council policies and practices and a vision for the urban forest going forward. So we mentioned back in 2018 about having this urban forest master plan. So we should be coming up now for the second poll on here, poll question, which it will be: which of the following do we think should be included in an urban forest master plan? We've got tree canopy cover, air quality, flooding, human well-being, or all of the above. we'll just see how we do on that for a few moments.
This might be the first time I'm seeing these results come in. All right, we're going to leave it. Looks like. All right. Whew. All right, here, I'm going to close it out now. And
Okay.
whew, for a second there, it was 100%, but luckily somebody came through with 1 vote for tree canopy cover. So all of the above.
Okay. Oh, hey, that's really good then. So at least all of you are thinking along the same lines as I said. So yeah, tree canopy cover, that is a big factor in there. But I think we were very keen with everything that we know and understand about the benefits of trees to people, that we actually captured all of those, and human well-being could actually be broken out into a number of different aspects. So we're just going to go through some of the challenges that we're facing on this. So Birmingham, we've got a population of 1.1 million people and rising. It's one of the youngest populations in Europe. We have a significant number of our wards in the top 10 percentile. It says IMD there, that's the indices of multiple deprivation. So that looks at impacts on health, the economy, their living environment, crime, and something else that I can't recall offhand. But there's a number that are all combined. So we've got, let's say, a fair number of those wards, or those lowest level of political authority in the top percentile. So high levels of years life lost, so YLL, in certain quarters. We've got areas of the city that have high air pollution, high urban heat island, suffer from pluvial and fluvial flooding. Now, I was talking to somebody else the other day and was saying that, you know, for those of you who didn't know the UK, then we've got places like Somerset, the Somerset levels, that when we have significant rainfall, flood, and it's spectacular. You know, there's huge areas of water all over the place, but not that many people live there, but it's very photogenic, and so it gets flashed all over the news. But Birmingham has often had more people affected by flooding than anywhere else in the UK, but it doesn't make the news because it's not spectacular. We've also got an increased demand for housing. Obviously, we're currently in the current COVID-19 pandemic to a greater or less extent, and that has brought to the fore the inequality of accessible green space. So we're looking at considering how we've looked at how that's considered. And of course, our ethnic minority groups tend to have been more impacted by the pandemic, and also they live in areas with low GI, poor air quality, and high urban heat island. So our next slide that should be coming up, hopefully. Here we go. Is just looking at the city as sort of an aerial view there. We've got two pictures on here. The large one on the right of the screen shows the city sort of demarcated out. It's the main bulk that sort of is an angle on the right hand side of that picture there. So I should be able to circle that. This bit here, this is Birmingham, and this is all the wards. And we've undertaken the canopy cover assessment using iTree Canopy tool, and we can see that we've got areas of high canopy cover up here and across this belt here, and areas of low canopy cover right in the heart of the city centre. So the city's average is 18.6%, and we've got wards ranging from 9.6%, which is right in the heart of the city, throughout to 46.8% in the north of the city there. And if we look at the small map that's just to the left of that, we can see this is a urban heat island intensity map. This is actually from 2006, sorry, as part of the heat wave. But we can see that the bulk of the urban heat island effect in the centre is also mirroring the bulk of the areas with low canopy and low GI. So very distinct correlations there. The next slide that we're going to come on to is a sort of an advancement and development of some of that there. So this is starting to show those areas of high deprivation. So the map on the left is showing the indices of multiple deprivation, most deprived areas to least deprived. The areas that are white on the map are just indicating that either they are businesses or industry, or it's open space. So the big blob up to the very top here, this is open space. That's one of our parks. The next map across, so the right hand side, then shows where we're likely to be seeing significant population expansions in terms of residential development. And the table at the bottom then starts to show some of the wards with the canopy cover levels here. So we can see that there are various ones on here. We've got, where's it here, the top one here, Borston Highgate, 9.6%. We also have a threshold of 2 hectares of public open space per 1,000 capita, but you can see we're already deficient on that there. And so if we're looking at where we're going in terms of where our population gain is going to be going, in that ward alone, we're potentially looking at another sort of 22, 23,000 people coming into there. So bringing green infrastructure into these areas is critical. And how do we do that? How do we look at bringing that in? So that's part of why we need to put the urban forest master plan in place, so we could start to have this strategy about bringing greening into this urban area. Finally, this was just the bit about the environmental justice side of things. This is also picking up on all those other elements. This is picking up on how accessible green space is. What is the quality of the green space there? What is the urban heat island effect? What is the flooding, the area's life lost? And it's highlighted the fact that we have got these red wards in the centre. They're also where we've got our highest levels of ethnic minority population as well, but they're the worst impacted from all of those aspects. So again, this is providing a focus for our urban forest master plan. And finally, I suppose just to say that, you know, the work that we've been doing has been recognised by the leader and the chief exec, and their forward for the urban forest master plan picks up on the fact that, you know, we are expecting 70% plus of the world's population to be living in cities, you know, by sort of 2050, that climate change is going to be impacting people's lives, and it's those benefits that the urban greening is going to bring to these people in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation that's playing a major part in that. So that's a little bit about the why we wanted an urban forest master plan. So back over to you, Josh, and then on to Kenton.
Yep, thanks a lot there, Simon. All right, we're gonna wrap things up here with Kenton, who's going to be talking about the how. So getting some good questions in. This last part should take about 10 more minutes, so we should have plenty of time for live Q&A at the end. So go ahead and get those teed up, guys. All right, looks good, Kenton.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Josh?
Sound great, man.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to Simon and Mac for their presentations, and also to everyone for turning up, really. It's a really good turnout for the webinar. And yeah, I'm super excited because, well, it is the UK's first urban forest master plan. And we were privileged enough to be able to work on it with Mac and Simon. And one of the reasons, you know, how come Treeconomics have been working on this, I guess it's a logical progression from looking at Torbay's urban forest in 2011, but looking at what we've got and how much that's worth. And as Mac said, it's then looking at managing and improving that asset. So we know, you know, what we've got, but it's actually more now with the master plan about what do you want and how do you get there. And so one of the other reasons why we were doing this is because it's something that really interested me. And I was lucky enough to be in the US in 2016 with colleagues, Keith Saker and Kevin Frediani, and we spent a day with Michael Leff, who wrote The Sustainable Urban Forest, a step-by-step approach. And this is a freely available PDF. It's either on a handout or we'll give you a link to it after the presentations. But the reason why it excited me is because it was basically a step-by-step approach to turn the traditional tree strategy that I've been seeing over here in the UK into something more evidence-based, an action-orientated master plan, something that resembled what Trees in the Townscape, which is the TDAG document, had been advocating for. And I'm originally a forester by training, and so it made complete sense to me to look at managing the urban forest at the landscape scale and over long time frames. And also, you know, a lot of the tree strategies that I'd seen As Mac was saying, really, they're sort of wish lists, and these tree strategies just weren't really looking at the long-term time frame and the public, the private split, the wider environment, and all those other things that you sort of tend to do in forest management. A lot of tree strategies don't have a vision, and really a strategy is a means to get to your vision. So if you don't have a vision, then is there any point really? Why bother doing a strategy? And if you aren't going to bother doing a master plan, then I think we've got to spend a lot of time planning. So we're going to delve in now to how we did this. And even before the planning, there's pre-planning. So we spent a lot of time talking to Mac and Simon before we sort of signed on the dotted line, as it were. And we formed a team engaging with others. Cecil Coinendijk of the Nature-Based Solutions Institute. So for those of you who don't know, he's was the leader at Vancouver on the urban forestry program there. So he's got a great deal of experience. We diarised a load of things well in advance, because you need time to engage with local stakeholders and set up a core group with Simon and Mac that could do stuff quickly, essentially, and then take that to the wider workshop group. So there was a clearer focus, and that saved a lot of time. We also drew up a list of potential consultees and experts, and they were from the international sort of sphere as well as local. So it was an inclusive process from the bottom up. It wasn't just a case of going away, writing a plan, and then saying, here you go, chaps. And that takes time. But it's really worth doing if you want it to be adopted, because if you want buy-in, you need to involve people, and you need to involve communities who are the biggest stakeholders of the urban forest right from the outset. And you need to allow time for that, because for a lot of these people, for some of them, it's the first time they've had a voice really to voice opinions, and some of them have got a lot to say, and that's even before you get into the nitty-gritty of concentrating on getting the all-important vision and the plan agreed. So it's a real two-way workshop, and that's important too, because it can't just be a token thing, a token workshop where you just present something that you're going to do anyway, and we'll see that as we go through. So in total, we did all these workshops and meetings, and we also did an action plan. Then there's the executive report, which the cover of which you see here. We developed the vision, and we also did a policy review. But before that, I've got my first poll question, which is how many people do you think it takes to write a master plan?
All right, looks like everybody's figured out the polling by now, so that's great. I think we have one more after that. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that's an interesting spread of results there. I'm going to come back to that later along with my other poll question. So in this instance, it is obviously for Birmingham rather than in general, but I thought it would be an interesting question to ask. So going back to the policy review, after setting up the timeline and the plan, and do be prepared to change things en route, we did this policy review, and so Cecil and Catherine worked a lot on this, and what we wanted to do was link international, European, national and local policy to Birmingham's urban forest. Things like the Sustainable Development Goals, the 25-year Environment Plan, the National Policy Planning Framework, and also a couple that Simon mentioned in his presentation. And it is something we've done previously for places like Islington, these types of exercises, but the difference for Birmingham, and what was great to be able to do, was to then, after we developed the master plan, was then to link all these policies to each target and KPI in the master plan. And I think that's quite critical to do, because this plan is going to need funding. And in order to fund it, you're going to need to demonstrate that by investing in the master plan, it's actually going to advance many other policies and areas and objectives at different scales. So not just local policies and targets, but also national ones as well. So after the policy review was done, we then worked through the workshops and looked at all the different KPIs. So we had the work that Left did as a basis for that. And obviously before that came the Feeney and Clark's paper, which Mac showed you. And during the various meetings and workshops and late nights and countless cups of coffee, we developed 37 KPIs. And so some of the ones in the Sustainable Urban Forest document, we anglicised, we ditched some, and actually we created some new ones as well. And we did those under 3 themes: the urban forest structure, which covers things like the canopy cover, age, sort of what have you got, really. And then the next section looks more at the community framework, because these are key. These are the biggest stakeholders of the urban forest. And not just the local community, but utilities as well, and the green industry, and also the international reputation of Birmingham. Birmingham's an international city, and I think it's a mistake to look inwards too much. So, you know, eyes are on Birmingham at the international scale as well. And then also the sustainable resource management approach. So these are things like the funding and the staffing and biosecurity and native tree species, the wider environment, a research and development agenda as well. So this is basically the bones of the plan, and through the workshop, all these KPIs where the performance was measured and then they were given priorities as well. So there was, this then went out to consultation, and there were some internationals on there as well. And for each of these KPIs, and targets, there's just one page in the plan for each. So that was part of the remit, to make it accessible, just one page detailing and quickly explaining what it is that's being looked at and why it's important, followed by a current performance level and any action to be taken, its priority, by whom and by when. And normally that's accompanied with a map image, and maps are great. I like them because they're fun to do and they make sense. You know, a picture paints 1,000 words, and it's a very quick way of expressing things to decision makers and politicians, I guess. So the aspiration, of course, is that all this work that's been done takes Birmingham towards its shared vision. And we did this over the course of 2 workshops and looked at the vision, and here it is. It's having more trees for Birmingham that deliver benefits for health, nature and climate change for all the communities within the city now and in the future, as part of an inclusive and sustainable urban forest. So I've got another poll question coming up for you, which is, how much do you think the master plan cost? So I'll just wait for that to pop up on the screen there, and then you can start voting on that one. And again, I'll come to both these poll questions as a wrap up on this presentation in just a mo.
All right, I'm going to close her down.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good spread as well. Okay, well, I better crack on actually. So the plan's done. We've got the vision, we've got an action plan. So what's next? Because as Mac alluded to, the plan is just the beginning. And I know people often discuss around, you know, is the urban forest master plan, is it a roadmap? Is it a destination? Is it both? And I've unashamedly borrowed one of Josh's slides here, because I think this shows it quite nicely. It's a continuum. We move beyond the Urban Forest Master Plan, and now begins the real work of implementing the plan, and then monitoring that impact and improving things, hopefully, along all those different criteria and indicators. So that's pretty much it. Cool things about the plan, I think, are that it was bottom up. So it was instigated by the community and the Birmingham tree people, who are non-profit or NGO, and working in partnership with Birmingham City Council as well. So it wasn't top down, and I don't think top down approaches work too well with communities, because they're the biggest stakeholders, and the urban forest is everyone's, right? Most of it is in the private estate. We had international consultees and experts, so it wasn't inward looking. We considered that wider environment within it, as well as the longer time horizon. So Simon was mentioning the flooding, but the plan isn't just constrained within those political boundaries, because especially with flooding and watersheds, they extend beyond Birmingham's political boundaries. So, key statistics, and this might answer some of the poll questions. And I know, how long did it take? Well, it took 11 months, but actually there was a few months before that of discussions with Mac and Simon, and we had pre-commencement meetings. And from the point we properly started it in December 2020 to today, it's taken around 11 months to do. We had about 51 people involved in the project, so 7 on our team, including myself, Catherine doing the policy review, Cecil Queenan Dyke, and we had folks helping out with the workshops and all the admin stuff behind there, making sure we got back to workshop participants as well. So even if their comments weren't integrated into the plan, that they got an email back explaining why, because there was a lot of great stuff that was captured in the workshops, but not all of it could be put in. It was more detail for further down the line. And we spent over 500 hours, just the core team. So that was ourselves and Simon and Mac on the work. And that cost somewhere in the region of £30,000. So that's quite a bit less than the estimate given in the earlier slide Mac showed. But of course, this is the first one in the UK, so we've got no yardstick, and that estimate was taken from the States. And Josh will correct me if I'm wrong, but in the States, when they do a master plan, a lot of the time they actually have to start from scratch and do a tree inventory as well as the master plan, and actually do that initial data gathering. Whereas in Birmingham, there's already a lot of data, and they're already doing a lot of, they already had a lot of that information and data to hand. So that's probably what it cost to do. I say probably because there's, you know, that includes Mac and Simon's time. That's what was budgeted for. So that's pretty much it from me. Rattled through at a bit of a pace to keep us on time, so I hope it wasn't too rushed. But thank you very much. Get in touch if you want to know more. But I think we're going to go back to Josh now. We're going to have a Q&A session. Thank you very much.
I can't hear you, Josh. Do you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting here talking on mute. Yeah, well, thanks everybody for joining. I think we got about 10 minutes here for some Q&A, so which is great. You know, anytime you take on a first of anything, there's always surprises along the way, and to see you guys pull this urban forest master plan off for Birmingham is super exciting. great job. Lots of good stuff in there. One of the quick questions I'm curious about is, and maybe we'll start with Mac and then Simon and Kenton. I'd love to, was there, what are, if any, big surprises came out of the process for doing the master plan? Anything for you, Mac, that kind of surprised you?
There were surprises in all of the workshops, to be fair, Josh. It's there's pulling in all directions, because obviously the people's views are very personal about the trees that they're dealing with. So we'll have those views from the professionals. So it might be about the tarmac and the roads, the flooding, the street lights, and then we'll have the views from tree wardens and volunteers, other members of other associated organisations that all want to pull in different directions. And what we were trying to do was to try and keep the group as focused as we possibly could on the measures that we're going to take. Yeah, and I guess it's the no shocks, just a few hiccups. I think a couple of rumble strips that we had to run across, because people obviously want to politicise certain things. I think for me, it went surprisingly smoothly, given the fact that we didn't know what was going to happen. I think it was pretty good in the end.
Yeah, that people are passionate about those trees. What about you, Simon? Any surprises along the way?
I don't know. I think Max covered that really. I think it was one of the things that was interesting for me. I think is just when we start talking to the different stakeholders about what we see, what we felt were priorities and what they felt were priorities. Like we're saying, sometimes they were a bit odd. So we had to have a bit of negotiation. We've also had to decide that actually, as a local authority, this is a priority for us. And so we've put those as a high priority. But and when we thought that actually we would have thought the community would have put that as a high priority. But yeah, no, I think it's probably slightly easier than I might have thought. Having said that, though, like I said, we only engaged with a small fraction of the 1.1 million people here. We tried to get a good cross section, so I'm sure we've not pleased everybody. But
yeah, 51 people. What about you, Kenton?
Yeah, I think one of the normal surprises is time. It always takes a bit longer than you think. I think when I drafted the original timeline and plan, I think there were some gasps, and then we amended it, and then we amended it again. And yeah, as you get towards the end as well, the other thing is that I've heard it said, and it's true, is that it takes you 20% of the time to do 80% of the work, and then that final 20% of the work takes 80% of the time. Yeah, but it was good actually. It's I think what helped is that Mac, Simon, and I were, and Cecil as well, of course, who's not here today. We were working quite closely together, so we weren't in isolation. We do a bit, come back, do a bit, come back, and then we had a chunk that was then taken to the workshop.
Great. Yeah, so we're getting some really good questions here. So Simon, I know you already answered this one, but I think I'd like you to expand it a little bit from David here, talking about how there's usually a catalyst for change in a community that prompts something, and he's trying to figure out what the panel thinks here about how you can. Sounds like all the work you did behind the scenes to get support, to get council, to convince them to invest in this. Any other thoughts or words of wisdom on that, on how to get the elected officials on board with doing a master plan?
I think, yeah, as I put in the chat there, I mean, I think, I was already sitting on a tree interest group, the Birmingham Trees for Life group, who were the ones who started that campaign. Obviously, as a council officer, I couldn't play any part in that because they were sort of, it was becoming a sort of political type of thing. But yeah, they went out onto the street, they protested, they were there at the tree, they raised the profile on social media. I think my input into that at the time was the fact that I could sort of maybe guide them towards the right sort of questions to ask, to point them in the right direction, because they can access directly the leader of the council if they want to, that I can't necessarily always do. The other thing as well, I've said this on a few other calls, is I'm now 30 plus years into my employment with the city council, and I got to a point where I can be a bit more belligerent and just say things to people. And I think you call people out, and that sort of helps so far. I'm not averse to being blunt with the truth with councillors, and I think to be honest, I think most of them, because I've had such a long relationship with a lot of the councillors, that actually have appreciated that honesty and sort of upfrontness and sort of being pragmatic as well. But yeah, so I think maybe it's just a fortunate situation I've been in, that we've been able to influence both from external and internal on that.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so Mac, you mentioned and you showed the slide there on the difference between a tree strategy and a master plan. It sounds like maybe, can you expand on that just a little bit more? Mark Johnson's got a question around that, and
certainly,
it's
great to see Mark here. Well, I've seen Mark for a very long time, since my days of external lecturing at MySco. And again, looking down the list of people attending, it's great to see so many people that I know that have turned up. I would say that we've agreed with TDAG and one or two other people, it's semantics. I don't really care what you call it, as long as it does something. And just doing what we've done for a long time. I know that we got case study 4 that Mark mentioned in Trees in Towns 2. There's nothing wrong with that at all. We're not saying that there is. We're just saying that a lot of the tree strategies now are not strategic. And there's an issue around what the difference with the master plan that we've done. You can call it whatever you like. You can call it Bob. Not too fussed what you call it, as long as it actually works. So what we've got is what we consider to be best management practices turned into performance indicators. And then we've judged ourselves against those performance indicators on how we're doing, and suggested how long it might be to increase the curve towards optimal performance. We have nothing in optimal, and we probably never will. But there's nothing wrong with a strategy or if you want to call it, a plan, a guide. There was some criticism on a webinar I was on yesterday that most of them tend to be a technical guide to arboriculture, and there's simply no point for that. We don't need a technical guide. I would imagine everybody on this call here knows more about arboriculture than they need to know to do their job. We didn't want to write a technical guide on how to prune a tree. We wanted to increase our urban forestry management structure. So that's the route we took. I don't care what you call it. We call ours a master plan. We think it fits that definition better. We gave some slides about the definitions, but I don't care what you call it, as long as it actually does something positive for urban forest management. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks. That's interesting, the semantics. Kenton, here's a good question that maybe you can expand on a little bit, just on because you're an interesting part of this panel in the sense you cover the whole UK and everything, and all your work in Europe. But have you investigated any of the drivers of the tree cover, whether it's land use and historical and current trends with respect to annual rate of change in tree canopy cover?
No, not as a matter of course, just, yeah, I mean, that's a big subject. I know Mac's got his hand up as well. And I think looking at, we did an exercise in Torbay again. A colleague of mine looked at canopy cover change in Torbay and found it had slightly gone up. And historically, from the sort of 1940s, 50s, it's gone up, and then it sort of, and I'm talking across the board here, averages, not specific locales, but the general trend has been upwards, and then it sort of slowed down and dipped in some places in the 80s and 90s with new developments going in and larger trees being removed, being replaced by smaller trees, and you can see that in the aerial imagery as well. Did you want to?
All right.
Yeah, there was one slide that alluded to it earlier on in the talk. We've got 6, I think it's 6 canopy measurements, and depending on which 5 of which 6 we choose, this is Birmingham specifically, we can raise or lower our canopy achievements. So we've done quite well, or we haven't done very well at all. And that's because we don't really know what was measured. So some measured at 16% and some came out at 25%. Don't know what they were counting. So are we kind of suggesting that putting all your eggs in the basket of canopy cover or canopy density or whatever you want to call it may be a bit of a mistake if you don't know how it's measured. And if you measure two different things using two different metrics, you won't get the right answer. So part of the master plan was identified that problem, and then we'll be writing some kind of detailed specification on how we will measure our targets in the future so they're consistent and accurate.
All right, well, thanks a lot, guys. I think with that, we'll go ahead and shut her down. There's several questions that we didn't really get to yet, but we can follow up to those with individually to everybody, but to respect everyone's time, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks to our panelists for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your experience here. Hopefully this has been enlightening for attendees and you learned something. And I encourage you, if you are interested in doing your own master plan, reach out to this team and they can tell you what to expect and maybe help along the way there. So, you will be getting a follow-up survey email. If you fill that out and you want a copy of the slides, just indicate in the survey. We'd love to know what you thought, how we did here. That helps us out to make it even better. I know Treeconomics has 3 more winter webinars planned, so keep an eye out for those. And if you want to sign up for the newsletter from Treeconomics, that's in the follow-up survey as well, where you can find out about all the great work that they're doing and some of the upcoming events. So with that, we'll sign off, and thanks everybody for your time. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all. Thank you.